if it's worth that price.
Listen, $73,000 sounds like a lot of money, but if you go to the Four Seasons for 30 days, okay, that's going to be 40 grand.
Right.
Okay, what did you get? Was there any life-changing thing going on there? Everything that we've done here is mindful. It only seems like horseshit to people that don't know better. But you don't have to know better, bro, because your life didn't depend on it. You didn't go through it.
Okay, calm down, bro. Besides, you're being a little unfair to the Four Seasons. Plenty of life-changing things happened there. Just last year, Jaden Smith claimed that the one in Toronto spiked his pancakes with cheese after kicking him out of his room. And if a handful of Canadians tricking an evicted child millionaire with undisclosed ricotta isn't a life-changing thing, I guess I don't know what is anymore. And $73,000 for 30 days does sound like a lot of money, because it is a lot of money.
Yeah, that I like that clip a lot. So, a couple of unpacks there. First, he talks about types of treatment, and he says, some places use 12-step, some people use the equine therapy, and you couldn't see this because, we're doing this radio style, but he also put some detox meds up on the screen. So, Subutex, naltrexone, things that people will take to help them get rid of cravings or to, manage their withdrawal symptoms from stopping to using the drugs. And so his point is, hey, there's no one class of this is what everybody does. What he fails to point out, though, is that there is such a thing as best practices. And the way that all medical industries govern is by the consensus of what the research and the science says. And he never once, and I don't want to spill the results here of all the other clips we're going to go over, he never once points out that there is ASAM, the association, or what is it, the addiction...
American Society of Addictive Medicine.
Yes, there's an entire body that does research, puts out best practices, addiction medicine. And these guys give us the dimensions, the 6 dimensions that we use to classify. They are the industry standards. And we also have things like JCO that come in and require that at the kernel, at the core of what we do, we have these basic standards, that we're using cognitive behavioral therapies, that we're using evidence-based practices. Some people throw in horses and crap, or they might have a dog in there, but it's a misrepresentation to say that's what we're banking everything on.
Yeah, it is a little misrepresentation. And I think the other thing too is that, keep in mind, when a lot of these places, unless you're doing out of pocket and you are creating a treatment program specifically designed for the wealthiest people who can just throw out 70 grand out of their own pocket, you're likely billing insurance.
Yes.
And insurance will look for any reason they can to not pay you.
Exactly.
So one of the things, when you submit to insurance, and you have to do this sometimes every 3 to 4 days to get 3 or 4 more days, they grill you about everything. And so they want to see evidence-based practices. They want to see something that you're using. And if you aren't demonstrating it, they're not going to pay it.
Okay, so here's something the listener probably doesn't know. Unless you also are a healthcare provider out there, here's what it's like to actually do this for a living. So you go out to meet with your patient, you do things at them, right? You do therapy, you guide them through stuff, and you're doing hard work. Then you have to pull over to the sideline every couple of days, and you have to contact the insurance, and you have to explain to them verbally everything that you are doing. You have to assess the client through all these different measures and instruments and show them data that says, here's the progress we're making or not making, and here's why I'm asking you to let me keep helping this person. Even though it is a life and death illness, even though if they walk out that door, they will put a needle in their arm and die, the insurance requires us and wrings us out to just demand and beg for any amount of help that we're allowed to provide these people. And they're constantly scrutinizing everything we do. We can't say, we pet a horse today, ha ha ha. That'll never work. And I don't think anybody's billing for petting the horse. Petting the horse is their little activity that they get as a treat if they did a good job and they're participating in the program.
Well, yeah, most places, I don't think you can bill for equine therapy. I think most places, if you're utilizing equine therapy, that is kind of an added bonus to what you're already doing.
And these are the bells and whistles. And some people make fun of us and they'll go, what do you guys do? Because Nick and I run a luxury rehab. So they do yoga. They do massage. We have a gourmet chef that's on the floor ready to prepare all the meals. And you think, oh my gosh, that's outlandish. No, people have to eat. So every healthcare facility is going to have a chef. I just have a good one. And then, we have massage, we have yoga. But the insurance isn't paying for that, right? And we have to put those things forward because Denial is a big part of addiction, and stubbornness and this resilience to not get treatment. So making it comfortable, making it have these little fun little bells and whistles might save somebody's life. I have had people that came because we allowed them to bring their dog. And like that was meaningful for them and that was special. I'm not billing that as some kind of animal therapy, right? Even though the dog probably has therapeutic value. But it could have saved that person's life to have some kind of extra measure of comfort that gave them the strength to step forward and do something which is extremely uncomfortable and disruptive in your life, man. You're going to go away for 30 to 45 days, stop your life, stop your job, not see your family. That's hard to do. So yeah, we put some bells and whistles out there to help people, but everything we do is justified, evidence-based, to the highest standards, and the people that pay us the money don't want to pay us the money. Trust me, we have to prove that we have licensed professionals doing everything that we do. But it's true that like a while ago, the standards were way lower, but the standards have fundamentally changed. You can't even get on insurance anymore unless you have a JCO.
Sure. Which JCO is a special accreditation.
Yeah.
Right. So it's an outside party will come. They will review your program, and based off of how you do and what you can prove and what you can show, then they give you special accreditation. With that special accreditation, you can put that on your website. You can advertise that you have that, and insurance companies then will reimburse you for services if you have this special accreditation. So it's kind of a checks and balances, which is good. Like I'm not complaining. Like and it sucks having to do these extensive utilization reviews every few days for clients. But if that's what we have to do, that's fine. I'm fine with it because in my mind, if we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, fine. I'll go through those steps. I have no problem justifying what we do and how we do it. And if by doing that, it keeps out some of the other people who are providing crappy services and who are not doing the best that they can do, then that's fine. It kind of helps weed out some of those folks. Yeah, absolutely. And another thing he talked about was the price. And he says, "Oh, it's like $70,000." And the guy's like, "Well, go to the Four Seasons, for 30 days." I think it's fascinating because I've talked to people before and they'll say, "Wow, this thing is tens of thousands of dollars, right? 70 is a little high, but tens of thousands of dollars, which again, your insurance is covering." And the other thing people have to remember is, okay, pick a healthcare environment. Put a medical doctor in there. Put round-the-clock 24-hour nurses in there. Put master and doctoral level therapists in there who've done years and years of extra work to prepare for this. Put 24-hour technicians in there to make sure that you're safe. Create a safe environment. Now create a way to feed you and get medicine to you and create an entire facility. All right, price it. I don't know. What is the value of that? What's the value of keeping a person alive for that long under that level of scrutiny? And addiction medicine is no joke. People think, these guys are tough to work with. They're ridiculously hard to work with because they're not hurting the whole time. They're only hurting for a couple of days. They're not just going to lay in a bed and sleep for 30 days. We have to engage them constantly, and they're constantly faced with the temptation to go back out and destroy themselves. And that's something that we have to contend with every day. These people are so difficult to work with. Most of them get thrown out of psychiatric hospitals. Psychiatric hospitals, which are prepared to take on people that, confuse their wife for a hat. That level of care throws out addicts, and we have to manage them. So yeah, the compensation matches the amount of staff that we need to kind of put together to provide a quality program. But yes, people also make their livings like this. Nick and I do, and we worked hard to get to that point in healthcare and do a good job. But our business is saving people, and it just so happens that medicine and all of American healthcare continues to be a very expensive enterprise. And that's not just an addictions problem. That's everywhere.
And with money like that to be made just from urine, it is hardly surprising that some operators have gone to extreme lengths to attract patients with insurance, even engaging in something called patient brokering or junkie hunting. Here is how that works.
Mercedes Smith, a recovering addict herself, told us sober home operators compete for addicts with good insurance, enticing them with promises of free rent, free food, free cigarettes.
We would have to drive around Delray, and anybody with suitcases, we would have to ask them, "Do you have insurance? Do you have a place you can go?"
Okay, so in terms of questions to ask people from the window of a moving vehicle, "Do you have insurance?" is barely less sinister than "Would you like some candy?" or "What size of flesh are you?" And it gets even grimmer because the truth is there can be more money in a patient relapsing than in them recovering. So at its worst, this system encourages a cycle of admission, relapse, readmission, and relapse again. This cycle even has its own special term. It's called the Florida Shuffle. And if you are not extremely lucky, this is how it ends.
In the Florida Shuffle, you go in and out of recovery, in and out of rehab centers, in and out of sober homes, milking the individual for their insurance until that person dies.
Man, Florida.
Yeah. And this part was kind of the difficult part because obviously I know that this happens.
Right.
And it's the same as with anything else. Like there are people who are in the game who are honest, sincere, doing this for the right reasons. And then there are people who are not.
Right.
And unfortunately, we all kind of get lumped into that, and we all pay the price for that. Like the client brokering, which Jim will explain in a second. It's frustrating for me as a clinical director because it's something that I'm constantly on the lookout for because
Right.
I don't want to get involved in that.
Right.
Like that does bother me, and if I detect that clients are getting paid to be in the program, I got to get them out because
Right.
I don't want anything to do with that. But it's sad that we have to deal with that. And that's because people took advantage of the system. They abused it. They found a loophole. They found some way to take advantage of people who really need help. And now as a result, we all suffer.
You know, when he mentions Delray, Florida is probably the best case study of the addiction industry gone completely wrong. And people just bought up all these beachside houses. They set up a non-licensed facility. And a lot of them were sober livings. They actually weren't rehabs. But that was an interesting part of the cycle because when somebody graduates our rehab after 30 days, they're not usually prepared to just go live the rest of their life. Like we want them to step down into a lower level of care. And so at our rehab, we offer like that outpatient kind of counseling as well. But a lot of folks will go find a sober living home, which is a safe place for them to live with other people who also are committed to being sober. There's accountability. The staff is there to check on you and make sure you're not using drugs. And that's important because they're trying to rebuild their lives. But as we mentioned earlier, drug addiction, alcohol addiction contains within it the possibility of relapse. We're not surprised if that happens, and we treat it when we see it. And so if somebody's in a sober living and they relapse, what should they do? Should they just go back out and never come back? They should just they kick them out, put them in the streets. Oh, sorry, you smoked pot. Sorry, you drank. Sorry, you used drugs. Get out, never come back. Like, no, your goal is to redirect them into care. But when you bring that client or that person back into care, it creates a loop. And now people are scrutinizing that and saying, well, oh, that's all shady inherently. But of course, if a cancer patient goes into remission, we don't judge that the same way. We say, well, their disease is, getting out of control. Maybe they're not following doctor recommendations. Let's stay with this, right? Let's advocate for health. But in this business, I think people do get confused. Now, the brokering thing went crazy in Florida, and we saw that go nuts, and to the point where Florida basically shut down the entire industry. And what that means is it's a revolving door where patient comes in, goes to rehab, gets graduated out, goes to a sober living. And there were shady sober livings that were basically waiting for the person to relapse so they could take them and essentially sell them to a rehab and say, hey, I have this guy that needs some help. How about you kick me some money and I'll make sure that he comes to you? And we call that patient brokering, which is something that's very shady, happens mostly in Florida and California, but unfortunately has tarnished the entire healthcare industry in our sector because there's no other sector of healthcare where people might want to come see you.
Right.
Nobody's like, oh, let me go get dialysis and fake the symptoms so I can get dialysis. Like, that's not a thing. But like in our industry, yeah, it's very comfortable to come here and people want to, but sometimes, they accept a bribe or sometimes somebody else accepts a bribe and sends them over, which is, a travesty. It's not okay.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's very frustrating. But what can you do? I mean, like the only thing that we can really do is we can just continue to focus on providing the best service that we can for our folks.
Yep.
That's it.
That's all we can do. And to tell you guys the truth, one of the things I didn't like about this part of the clip was he was shining a light on the ugly underbelly of it, which is fine. But again, my fear is somebody's watching this whose kid is hurting, is addicted to something, whose spouse is addicted to something, or who themselves is addicted to something, and they're choosing not to go get help now. because they're like, oh, my suspicions are confirmed. It's all a racket. Well, there's no point.
Yeah.
And addicts are prone to that kind of thinking. They are very dangerously vulnerable to like conspiratorial, dismissive, treatment-resistant thinking.
Right. I was thinking that too. Watching this, I was thinking like, oh, man.